evening. Welcome to Training Tuesday. I am Bill Brown, the Director of Innovative Evangelism for the Baltimore-Washington Conference, and also I resource churches in the Peninsula Delaware Conference as part of our affiliation as well. We are joined tonight by the Reverend Erica Robinson Johnson, who is the Chief Administrative Officer for both the Peninsula Delaware Conference and the Baltimore-Washington Conference, as we are in affiliated relationship doing ministry together. And I am just so excited. She is closing out our fall season with a topic that is long in coming, because the number one thing I hear people gripe about is yet another meeting. And so if we can have a good answer to how to have more meaningful meetings, that is a much relief to many people. Just a couple of announcements before we get started. You will see that your chat is open. Currently, you can only chat with myself. So don't ask any questions in the chat. I will ignore them at this point in time. If you have a question, please use the Q&A feature. Now, here is the catch, though. You'll want to be ready on the chat feature, because there will come a portion of tonight's presentation that you will be asked to answer something in the chat. So you want to be ready to be able to answer the question or make a comment as it's requested. But again, if you have a question, use the Q&A. Ask questions throughout the evening. We'll get to them at the end of the presentation, but please ask them throughout the evening so we can begin to curate those questions, and we'll get to as many as we have time to do. But to begin with, let us bow our heads and unite our hearts for a word of prayer. Holy and gracious God, I give you thanks for the opportunity to gather together with my siblings from across our annual conferences. For we are in ministry together, and while we may have different names of Peninsula Delaware and Baltimore-Washington, we are one in Christ. And for that, I am ever so grateful. For we can do so much more together than any one of us could do apart. And at times, that's the purpose of meetings, to see what we can do together. So I feel so blessed to have Erica with us tonight, guiding and leading us in tonight's presentation. And I pray for your spirit to be upon her and upon all of us, to give us wisdom, insight, and understanding, in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen. As an aside, yes, tonight is being recorded. Yes, the slides will be available after the presentation once the recording is made public. And there will also be a special handout you'll want to check into, and you'll be able to find all of that hopefully by Friday on the affiliated website, and I will put that web address in the chat. But other than that, Erica, thank you for joining us tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to you and hide myself for a few minutes.
Thank you, Bill. It's great to have your help, and it's good to be with you all this evening. I hope that you've had a good day, and I hope that this is worth your time this evening. Bill gave you my official role and title across the affiliation, but a little bit more about my background. Before I was doing this work, I served 5 congregations across 20 years as pastor in 2 different annual conferences. And so have been a part of all the church meetings that there are to have. And then I served 8 years as director of connectional ministries in the New England Conference. And when I started that role, I was handed a list of all the committees, boards, and agencies that I was to serve on in some capacity, either as a voting member or an ex officio member. And it was 57 committees, boards, and agencies, plus jurisdictional and general church meetings that I was expected to attend. So I have been to my share of meetings. And of course, some, perhaps many, were important, fruitful, faithful to the mission. But as you can imagine, and as you've experienced, there were many that left me wondering if it was time well spent. I know that you're tuning in to this Training Tuesday because you have likely shared some similar frustrations with meetings that you've attended, maybe meetings that you've led and wished they would have gone differently. So tonight is an attempt to help you to turn those experiences around and maybe make a difference in the way that you're able to lead and change the outcome of meetings in the future. I'm going to share my screen here and invite you to engage with me in a bit of sharing here as we get going here. All right. So the chat should be open now for you, and I want you to let us know what is your biggest pet peeve about meetings. And if you'll just put your comment in the chat, and in a bit, Bill will help share those. You can see them. You should be able to see each other's answers, but I have Bill help me out and read some of those aloud.
You have opened a can of worms because they're coming in so quickly. I'm going to try to keep up. We've got they're too long, no agendas, no clear goals, getting off tasks, too much rehashing, not organized, too long, people who go on and on and on off topic when there's no clear purpose, when there's no agenda, meeting for no reason, too many meetings that are ineffective, redundancy, people going off topic, people who don't follow through on assignments, meeting about the same thing with several committees, lots of discussion, no resolutions, people getting off track, latecomers, too many meetings that are poorly planned, not getting to the important things, when they're held. Oh, my favorite one. I don't know if this is really an answer or not. Their pet peeve is why.
Yeah. Great answers. So I can already tell that I'm not going to be a waste of your time. I'm going to talk about a lot of those things this evening. Now, I likely won't tell you anything earth-shattering about how to make all that go away. Most of the guidance is common sense. It's things that you probably already know and can imagine. But what happens is it's just kind of like, we all know how to eat right and exercise, but doesn't mean we do it. Right. So I can tell you things that might make a difference, but we fall into bad habits. We get busy. We don't take the time to prepare the way we should. We allow people to sabotage things. We make mistakes and repeat them. So I'm going to remind us of some best practices and give some guidance from my experience. And I hope that you will take away some things that may inspire you to make a change. I hope that you'll share this recording with those on your team, whatever team that you are a part of, whether you're the leader or a participant in the group, so that together you can learn from this and talk about the ideas here, and then take away some of the things that you might incorporate into your teamwork so that you can improve what's not working well for you. I think that Bill's already said that these videos are all saved on the conference website. So as time goes by and you find yourself in another frustrating situation where meeting after meeting, you're not really accomplishing the things that you would hope, or you keep falling into the same trap, that you might take this out as a tool. It won't be long, and so it's something that you could use during a meeting to share with your team and see what you might do together. I also want to reiterate what Bill said, that after my presentation, there'll be a time for your questions and your answers, and I'll be happy to answer as best I can. But I would also encourage you to weigh in with your ideas and what's working for you. What best practices have you figured out to make meetings more meaningful and more effective? And and helpful in your ministry. So there'll be an opportunity for us to learn together when we get to the end. If you take away only one key thing from my presentation today, it's this: better meetings start with preparation. If we just show up at a meeting as a leader or as a participant without really preparing ourselves ahead of time, the outcome of the meeting is going to reflect that. And as I said, we all get busy. Sometimes I'm going from one meeting to the next, barely have time to process one before I'm in another one, or I'm coming at a meeting with a lot of things on my mind, or I've run through traffic to get home and turn on the Zoom. I'm not always my best self when I come as a participant to a meeting, but I hope that if I'm leading a meeting, I've really put thought and care and consideration into how I'm going to be ready to lead that meeting. You all did such a good job of saying what your pet peeves are, and you can remember with me a time that you've attended a meeting. The chair calls for the approval of the minutes, and you realize you don't know where the minutes are. You're not even sure you received them, or maybe you were just handed them at the beginning of the meeting or emailed them 5 minutes before the Zoom. Or maybe you're chairing a meeting and you haven't determined ahead of time who's going to say the opening prayer. And so you ask for a volunteer, and then there's that awkward moment where everybody's sitting on their hands and looking down, and you're waiting for somebody to do the task. Or maybe you find yourself repeating a discussion, and this came through in our open chat, of having the same discussion over and over again. And you realize, didn't we talk about this at last month's meeting? But nobody else seems to remember because you're having the same discussion with no final decision. Preparation is the responsibility of the chair first and foremost, but the entire team has a role to play. And key leaders need to ask some basic questions in order to prepare for a meeting that doesn't meet those pitfalls that I just named. Some essential questions to ask are who, what, where, why, when, and how. The most important question is why. And I love that that was the last one entered into the chat, or one of the last ones entered to the chat, this question, why? Why have meetings? That's the first question we need to ask before we schedule a meeting, is why? Why call a meeting? We have to ask ourselves what we hope to accomplish, what difference it will make if we meet. Ask ourselves if we really need a meeting or if we can accomplish our goals some other way. Don't just meet because it's on the calendar. Bishop Easterling's always saying, let's not meet just to have a meeting. Let's ask ourselves what the team needs to do together to make a difference in our mission and ministry. Might there be better ways of accomplishing our goals than meeting together? I used to serve on a denominational team that met only once a year. It was a 24-hour meeting. We started with lunch on one day and finished with lunch on the next, so that participants could fly in one day and out the next and only stay one night in a hotel. The meeting was in January in the Northeast. And for the first 4 years that I was on this team, 3 of the 4 years, the meeting was canceled because of weather, because no one's flights could make it. This was way before everyone had Zoom and we could have met online. So we just didn't have the meeting, and they never got rescheduled. And you know what? It never seemed to matter. For some reason, everything got done. Either the executive committee just took care of what needed, or if there was a required vote, it was emailed out to everyone and we voted online. So clearly the meeting didn't really need to happen. And I said before that I served as a pastor of several churches. And I remember in churches, typically committees meet like once a month or once a quarter. I serve on some committees now in the 2 conferences that meet every month. And many times I'd show up at a meeting and realize that there was nothing really new to discuss. We pretty much had the same agenda every month. And some months, not a lot happens between meetings. And we find ourselves kind of going through the agenda and having a bunch of people say, I have nothing to report. I have nothing to report. I have nothing to the report. And so you get to the end and wonder, why did I even bother to come? So there's several times we may just need to ask the question, why, and determine if there really, really is a need to get together. Business experts tell us to use these criteria to determine if we need a meeting. Ask yourself, do you need the input and discussion by members of the team? If you really need to gather input and have a discussion, then absolutely meet. Is collaboration important to this particular task? Do you want input from a number of people, or could one or two people make the decision on behalf of the group? Ask if you need to make some decisions that are time sensitive and necessary for the work. This could be things like passing a budget, or nominating leaders, or selecting a contractor from a list of bidding agents. If you need input, collaboration, or a vote, then a meeting likely is in order. It doesn't have to be a long meeting necessarily, but you might need a meeting to accomplish those things. So those are some key factors that would impact your decision on whether or not to meet. Then there's the question of whether or not a meeting could be taken care of in an email instead. Sometimes an email would suffice. How often have you left a meeting thinking that could have just been an email? It's true that email can be a very effective and efficient tool for group work, but it has problems and pitfalls too. Email is best used for sharing information that is straightforward and doesn't require much explanation, like telling everybody, hey, come to the pizza party Wednesday at 7, bring a side dish to share. Sharing information, you don't need to get together to tell basic information. You could send an email. Sending reports that you want everybody to read or study. You could use an email to send information ahead of a meeting rather than hashing through it during the meeting, taking time during a meeting to read something to people or to walk them through a report. Or giving a status update. Maybe you decided last month that somebody was going to investigate what's happening, who's digging up, what animal is digging holes in the church's front lawn. We need to know so that we can, get pest control on it. Well, maybe everybody, the trustees go and somebody researches that and they send out a status report and say, we've taken care of it. We've figured out who, in DC, I live in DC, the beavers are chewing the cherry trees. So, it's good to know so that they can get on that and figure that out. But we don't need a meeting to report on what's going on. Email can be used to request quick feedback, like a quick up and down vote that doesn't require any discussion. Do you want red or green decorations at the Christmas party? Everybody just weigh in, or getting an opinion on something and just asking for some feedback, sending out a manuscript for a promotion that you're going to do, and just getting some quick feedback or editing from the group, but you don't need to workshop it all together in one place. If the conversation and feedback starts to get a little bit more complicated, requires too much explanation, then meet. But otherwise, an email can take care of a lot of simple information sharing. All right, so I said preparation is the key, and you've answered the question why, and you've determined, yes, a meeting is the best way to meet your hoped for outcomes. So now you're on to the next important preparation questions. The next question is who? Who should be at the meeting? Most of the time that is already determined for you. Book of Discipline tells you these are the members of your committee, or you've got a leadership slate that tells you who's on your team. But not all meetings require the entire team. Decide what meetings will be necessary for everyone to attend and what work can be done by a core team or a subcommittee. Small teams might be able to work on a project and bring a report to the full team for input or support if that's required. An example would be a team of 3 trustees who work on getting bids for architects for a renovation project you're going to do at church. They bring the executive summary to the board of trustees for a vote, rather than the entire board having to sit through and listen to RFPs and presentations from each firm and hearing their proposals. Have a small team work on it, bring the executive summary, vote on it as a group. When you've determined who should be at the meeting, it also helps to collaborate with them before the meeting on your presentation and your preparation. As a chair, you can connect with those who'll have roles in the meeting, make sure you're all on the same page about expectations. You can all share in keeping things on track when you meet. It's also really important to assign and delegate key roles. Have you ever sat in that awkward and uncomfortable space of not having anyone to take the notes, and you spend 5 minutes waiting for somebody to volunteer? It's not the best use of your time. Ask yourself ahead of time, who's going to record the minutes? Who's going to serve as the chaplain and pray or lead devotions? Who's going to run the technology if we're having a Zoom meeting? Who's going to keep time if you're not good at it as the chair? Who's going to take care of the hospitality around making sure the room is ready and set up if you're in person? Determining those roles and key functions ahead of time is not only going to save time at the meeting, but it won't put people on the spot, make them feel uncomfortable, and everyone else too. It'll allow you to choose leaders based on their spiritual gifts and really honor that and give people a place to use their spiritual gifts. It shows also that you're prepared, and it will make for a more meaningful and effective meeting if everyone there has clear roles and responsibilities, and not only that, comes prepared to lead well. The next question on our list is what? What will happen at the meeting? What reports are necessary? Maybe you have a meeting once a month. Say you have a church council meeting once a month, and each committee chair is going to bring a report. Well, there are likely months where there's no report. If you're meeting every month, there might be a group that hasn't met in a month. And so they really don't have anything at all new to bring to the meeting. Send an email out to each chair or each presenter as you build your agenda. Give them a deadline to turn in their report or their agenda item, things that they would like to have on the agenda. If they have nothing to report, nothing to add to the agenda, then take them off of the agenda. If the report isn't something that requires discussion or a vote, maybe their report could just be printed at the end of the agenda. I have a regular group I meet with all the time where people we have a for information only section. We have our agenda, people give reports, but if it's just something that people need to know, we add it to the end of the agenda. For your information only. That gets sent out ahead. People can read it ahead. If there's really something that people want to discuss, they may talk about it at the meeting, but mostly it's just there for people to read. They have it printed on their agenda as well as sent to them ahead of time. This will streamline your meeting as you focus on more pressing discussion points and allow you time to spend time on the things that people really need to take action on at that particular meeting. So once you've decided who and what, the next question is when. This one may seem like it's the easiest, but I think that we often default to the way it's always been done. Oh, the third Thursday of the month is when the trustees meet, so that's when we're going to have a meeting. But There are several things that you might consider that might actually improve your outcomes. If you give some careful thought and work together as a group on when the group is going to be most effective and you're going to have the biggest impact because people are going to be the most engaged, that will help you. Let me get rid of this. There we go. So consider things like accessibility. Now we have all kinds of different ways for people to participate in meetings that we didn't have before. How quickly did we convert to being able to meet online? And what a difference that's made for how many people might be able to join in a meeting. People that don't drive at night, or people who have responsibility for caring for children or elderly parents, or are caregivers to a spouse. Consider meeting at times that work and be inclusive in your considerations of who you might otherwise leave out. Think about convenience. Well, it might be convenient for you to meet at a certain time. Think about what is convenient for the majority of your group and work through that together. Share with one another what things you might want to take in consideration. And then if some people have obstacles, like they're coming straight from work and so they won't have a chance to grab a bite to eat, maybe you want to then offer some things like some food or childcare or other things that might help their participation to be more for them to be able to more fully participate. Think about how you maximize the engagement of the team. If you know your team members and you have the option to meet when they are most effective, then try to do so. For me, I know that I have diminishing returns when I have an evening meeting. I've worked all day long. And then if I go to an evening meeting, I'm starting to shut down at the end of the night. That may not be when you want to have a meeting that requires a lot of thought and attention or a lot of bandwidth. If you are trying to make difficult decisions, or say you're on a staff parish relations committee and you're going to have difficult conversations or evaluate a staff member, you want to be at your best. You don't want to be cranky. You don't want to be hungry. You don't want to be hangry. So think about those times when you're really going to be able to do your best work and make your decisions based on that, rather than just the way it's always been done or when you think it might be the best time to meet. One other example I wanted to give was I served a church where most every member traveled about 20 to 30 minutes to get to the church. No one lived in the nearby neighborhood. And so when did everybody want to meet? They wanted to meet right before or right after worship on Sundays. And I, at the time, was the mother of a young child. And Sunday was difficult already to be pastor and parent, but then to also have to figure out what I was going to do with my kid on Sunday when my spouse wasn't around to assist me in that. It was a complicated situation. It wasn't necessarily the best time for me. It was certainly the best time for my parishioners. So somebody's going to have to make some compromises along the way, but work together on that as much as you can. All right, so the next question is where, and honestly, the same iterations for when are what you need to be asking for where. Think about accessibility, convenience, overcoming the obstacles, provide for the most engagement, decide if you want to meet virtually or in person. Where is going to be as important as when, as far as engaging all your members. And then finally, how. What will your meeting look like? It's important to build your agenda and share your expectations ahead of time so people will know how they're going to engage. So you send an agenda out ahead of time. You don't wait for people to get there to figure out what to expect and how the meeting's going to go. Your agenda should be clear and concise with the names of those who are presenting and what they're going to do and how long they're going to present. You should determine how you're going to do the presentations and make sure the presenters all know that. Are they going to have, I go to one meeting where one of the presenters always has a PowerPoint. So we're always going to need equipment for that. We're going to need a projector and a screen and the ability for him to connect his laptop. So what are you going to need for your presenters to be able to make their best presentations? How will you ensure everyone has a voice? Are you going to use a talking piece and give people a time limit and to pass that around and make sure that everyone has a chance to share? Are you going to, on Zoom, ask, only one person speak at a time and shut off the chat so there isn't background chatter? As I'm communicating with you tonight, Bill is monitoring the chat because I can't both pay attention to what I'm presenting and also what you might be saying. And that is one of the new challenges we have as leaders now who are managing meetings in a new way. I was thinking the other day about how I never really had a meeting in person where people were having as much conversation with one another in the meeting as we sometimes have at a meeting on Zoom, where people are actively engaging in a chat while the leader or the presenter is speaking. I find that can be very distracting. Some people love it. Some people like that kind of immediate engagement and that kind of dialogue. But I find for myself that it's very hard to have those conversations, and it doesn't respect the presenter as much, and it doesn't engage the whole group. So whether or not that works for you is something that you will want to determine with your team and set some boundaries around or guidelines around so that you are all on the same page and that you can hold one another accountable to that. What are you going to do to create an environment that welcomes all? Do you need food, drink? Do you need sign language interpretation or other language translation? Do you need caregiving opportunities for elders and children? Do you need tech support for those if you're having a remote meeting or a Zoom meeting? What are those kinds of things that you're going to provide so that everyone knows how the meeting is going to operate and how they're going to participate? So again, now that you've done your work to get ready for the meeting, make sure that everyone else is also prepared. Preparation, preparation, preparation. So you as the leader are prepared. Now you want to have everybody else be prepared. So I recommend that you send meeting information 1 week in advance of every meeting. You're either emailing that out, or if people don't have email, you're making sure you get that in people's hands a week before the meeting. What you're sending them is an agenda. You're also sending them a reminder of the meeting. You're also including any minutes or action items from the last time you met so that they can read those and be prepared for when the question comes, who approves the minutes? And you are including any kind of homework that you expect people to do before. So if you have presenters that have provided reports, make sure you ask people to read those reports and come with questions for clarification and be ready so you don't spend time in the meeting giving people a chance to read or hear a presentation that they could have read in advance. So then after the meeting, you also, I recommend, should send the minutes within a week, no longer than a week, and highlight the action items. I have been to so many meetings. I've made this fatal flaw myself, where we haven't sent out any notes until the next meeting, and we're just looking at the minutes. I remember one time where I was caught in my tracks because I was reading the minutes at a meeting that showed clearly that I had agreed to do something and bring a report, and I had completely forgotten about it. And it happens all the time. So it's really important that we follow up the meeting with minutes as soon as possible, highlight the action items. And I also recommend that somebody on the team, the chair or somebody else on the team, be the designated person to check in with people between meetings on those action items, just for some accountability, but also so things don't get fallen through the cracks. This would be an excellent role for somebody who's in a vice chair position. If you have a chair and a vice chair, often the vice chair doesn't have a specific role except for to fill in when the chair is sick or away. This may be an excellent role for some member, an at-large member, or a vice chair. That could be their unique role on a team to just look at the action items and to check in with people between meetings and say, how are you doing on that? Remember, we need this to be taken care of before we meet again. Is there any way I can support you? Mostly what I've been talking about so far are regular meetings throughout the year, monthly council meetings or quarterly board meetings. But some groups or teams can benefit from an annual retreat where you prepare for better outcomes all year long. An annual retreat can help you establish your mission and vision and hope for outcomes. It can help build relationships, help know your teammates so that you work together more effectively throughout the year. It can offer space and time to establish some shared values and to create covenants together around how you're going to communicate with each other, how you're going to hold one another accountable. Things like how you'll honor each person and give space for each person to share, to speak, how you expect folks to show up on Zoom, like I talked about a minute ago. Are we going to have an open chat? Or are we going to close the chat and listen and fully engage with each person who's speaking? Are we going to ask everyone to be on camera during a video, a virtual meeting? Or are we going to allow people to have their camera off and so we don't know if they're fully engaged? The expectations that you set together here will impact the time that you spend in all the future meetings. You might use an annual retreat to establish prayer partners or covenant groups within your team to support one another spiritually, to undergird your missional work together. I recommend that for groups that decide to have an annual retreat or an annual meeting that kind of kick off the whole year, that you bring in an outside facilitator for that particular event that will allow you to all fully engage. So the chair or whoever else might lead that from your team doesn't have these extra responsibilities, but somebody else is engaging you all and helping facilitate you through these important team building exercises and priority setting decisions. I heard a great story recently. A friend of mine was talking about the church she goes to here in one of our United Methodist churches here in the affiliation. And she said that their church has an annual retreat. It sounded like it was maybe an all church retreat. So not a particular board or committee, but a whole church retreat. But they really look forward to it every year. And this year they had a facilitator come and guided them in an Enneagram process. And if you haven't heard of an Enneagram, it's okay. It's one of these assessments that you take that kind of assesses your personality. It helps you to understand how you function, how you relate to other people in relationships, how you work with other people in teams, what motivates you, what drains you. It's incredibly helpful to take those kinds of inventories from time to time. Maybe you've done a Myers-Briggs assessment or something like that. It helps you understand how you operate and operate best, but also helps you understand the people that you live with or in relationship with or serve on a committee with. It really helps to explain how diverse the diversity among us. We're not all alike in the way we tick and what gets us motivated and what we like to do. And so it helps us to work better in relationship with people when we understand how they're sort of put together. So anyway, the story goes that this church did this Enneagram study and everybody did it. And in the Enneagram, you're scored by number. So every number has a different kind of personality, so to speak. And the number 2 in an Enneagram is people that identify as really strong in like the spiritual gift of helping. And what they discovered about their church was no one, at least the people on the retreat, nobody scored as a 2. So that would be the people that would like step in and fill a need when they see it, you know, like an usher or a greeter or people who might clean up after a retreat. And so it helped the pastor and other leaders of this church to really understand why they've been having such a hard time getting people to serve in those helping roles. So their annual retreat gave them this gift of learning who they are and where their strengths are, but also where they may have some deficiencies and where they may need to get some additional help. That's just one example of the ways that that kind of balcony time or that kind of time apart from the tasks and the day-to-day work and operating of the ministry and mission, having that kind of set aside time to learn more about yourself and your siblings in Christ and the people that you're working with in mission and ministry can really help you throughout the year to make those times you gather and the work that you do and the meetings that you come together for be much more effective and meaningful. All right, so now you've prepared. You've had your annual retreat to set your mission, vision, and outcomes. You've established your why, and you know, yes, we need to have a meeting. You've done all the prep work, the who, what, where, when, and how, and now you're ready to have the meeting. So what do you need to do during the meeting to make it the most effective? First, you've got to set the tone. You've got to frame your work according to the values that you've set. Stay focused on the agenda you've prepared and keep it moving. I heard a lot of comments in the chat about how there was too much talking, people that talk too much, people that dominate the conversation, people that get off track and don't stay focused. It's the role of the chair, but the whole team to hold one another accountable to staying on the agenda and keeping it flowing. You want to identify clear outcomes, decisions, and next steps, and you want to finish well. So I'm going to unpack each one of these a little bit. And each one of these I heard as pet peeves, or, you know, the problems to each of these were named as your pet peeves. So here's where I want you to lean in, and we'll talk about some ways of doing these better. Okay, so first of all, we want to set the tone. As United Methodists, our mission is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Across the affiliation, we have been encouraging all congregations and all members to become vital agents of transformation. And we know that transformed lives are the ones that transform lives. So everything that we do should be grounded in the opportunity for faith development, meaningful discipleship, and the means of grace, especially our meetings. Include in every meeting opportunities for people to experience the presence of God and to be transformed through Jesus Christ, to grow in their own faith. Offer opportunities for sharing scripture, prayer, communion, holy conversation. You may not do all of those at every meeting, but every meeting should invite people into an opportunity to experience the grace of God. Also remember together the covenants that you've created. You've had that annual meeting and you've decided how you're going to communicate with one another, that you're going to assume positive intent, that you're going to respect one another and keep the conversation on a level where everyone's opinion is valued and shared equally. Remember those covenants. I recommend that you take time to establish a covenant as a team. Do it at your annual meeting or do it at one meeting a year. And then at every meeting, review that. Read it out loud. Have it be on the agenda, printed at the top of the agenda, and read it together as you share your expectations for one another as you begin your meeting. That could include things like how we're going to speak to one another, what our time limits are going to be, what our expectations are for Zoom. All those things that you have made an agreement to that you can print. During the meeting, if you get off course, come back and reread it again. It's there as a tool, as a reminder, as a guide. All right, and then you want to keep it flowing. You've done the hard work of preparing the agenda with clear expectations. You've given timelines for presenters. Now together, you as the chair and participants in the meeting need to stick to it. We always know that the Spirit sometimes intercedes and intervenes, and a good leader needs to read the room and know when the group needs to stop for prayer or give special attention to something that's happening or being shared. But be careful to stay committed to the agreed upon agenda too. People have come ready, and if one topic begins to take over, it's not fair to those who have come and with a presentation and are ready, and who need the input, the discussion, and or the decision of the whole team. So remember to stay on track, hold one another to that, remind one another of the commitments you've made, pay attention to the scheduled agenda. And when things come up that may derail you, park those conversations. Literally create a parking lot if you're meeting in person, and have a flip chart or a board that you can write on and say, we're gonna put that over here so that your idea or your thought or your new agenda item gets recorded, but we're not going to spend time on that now. Don't allow new business. The time for getting things on the agenda should have been clearly known. People need the opportunity to read the reports in advance, prepare their questions, not make decisions hastily without time for discernment. It's not going to serve you well if you allow last minute things to come to the meeting and for people to be forced into a decision that they haven't prepared for. So when those ideas come up, put them on a sheet, mark them in the minutes. If it can't wait till the next meeting, commit someone or some small group of the team to talk to that person outside of the meeting. If it can wait till the next meeting, hold that for the next meeting. We heard in the chat, people mentioned a pet peeve is people who talk too much. If someone is speaking too much, dominating the conversation, or isn't respectful in their words and actions, or they keep putting things in the chat when you've asked people not to do that, pull out the covenants again, take a pause, reread them together, remind one another, we are here to do this important work, and it's important that everybody have an opportunity to weigh in. Don't put it all on the chair to confront the person who's talking too much. If it becomes a perennial problem, you may have to talk to that person in between meetings and ask them to recognize what they're doing and how that's impacting the rest of the group. And finally, honor start and end times. I am a big believer in this. We're all busy people. And so when we come to a meeting and you're slow to start it, that's not very helpful, because I'm worried that you're going to keep me longer at the other end. I also don't like being at the end of the meeting and I can see the agenda and it doesn't look like we're on track and it's going to go long. It's not very helpful to be in that situation when you've maybe made plans on the other end, you have other responsibilities, or you just want to go home because it's already been a long day. Honor the start and end times, and you will honor the people that are part of your team by respecting them and the valuable time that they have, so that they will want to continue to be part of your team. When you make a decision, make sure that everyone understands the decision that was made. This is a part of identifying the outcomes. Capture it in your minutes. Make sure everyone understands that what you're making a decision about and that you'll stand together outside the meeting. If you're not of one accord and you're well past the time that you've allotted for making a decision, and it can wait, postpone the decision for another meeting. Figure out another way to come at it, but don't push long into the night or long into the day beyond the established meeting time if you are having trouble getting to a decision. But when you have made a decision as a group, even if you don't all agree, you need to agree to support the decision once you leave the meeting. I had a bishop I worked with for many years who loved to use the phrase standing in the circle. We would come to the end of a decision as a group, and we may not all be unanimously in favor of the decision, but we would come to a decision and the bishop would say, can we all stand inside that circle? And what that meant was within that circle, we may not all have the exact same agreement on that decision. We may not all like it, but when we leave this meeting, we are going to stand in that circle. That is going to be the decision of this team. And we're not going to go and tell somebody that we personally didn't agree with it. We're going to stand inside that circle and the team is going to stand as one. Incredibly important for you to keep trust and keep relationship with one another that you've made a covenant with together. It's important for that team to have unity as you go out and represent your work with the congregation. Action items should also be clearly identified before you leave the meeting. If you have made a decision that somebody is going to be responsible for something, know what is needed, know when it's needed by, and what person or team is responsible, and record those clearly in the minutes. I'm going to talk about that again in a little bit because this part is so key to making a difference with your meetings. If you just meet, you keep meeting, and the things never get done that you say you're going to do, then it will wear people out, will burn people out. Everyone will be frustrated and you won't accomplish your outcomes. The chair, as I said before, or another designated person should follow up between meetings to ensure that the action items are being cared for. And as I said, it will also help to have minutes sent out soon after the meeting and then again a week before the next meeting so that action items don't get dropped. All right, I want to show you an example of how you might craft an agenda with space for the secretary or the recorder to record decisions as well as action items and next steps. And this is going to be provided with the slides as an editable document that you can actually take and use and make it your own. This is easily readable and people can zero in on everything that's happening here. You can use this form both as your agenda and as your minutes. This form shows the time, and you might actually, instead of the actual time on the clock, you might put 10 minutes or 15 minutes or actual times, whatever helps you to keep track of whether or not something is on schedule. Then the next thing is what's happening in the meeting. You see here we have an opening prayer and then a scripture reading and then reading our shared covenant, then the approval of the minutes. Then we get into the meat of the meeting with the reports. We show who the presenter is so that people can be anticipating, okay, I'm up next, I need to be ready. In the next column, the secretary or the recorder can put any action that is taken, and then the final column, next steps. What are the next steps? What are the things that need to be happening after this meeting? If we pull out of this agenda, you'll see at 7:45, that's when the discipleship committee is giving their report, and they're giving a report on, no, actually, I'm gonna go with the one before it, the missions committee. They have a proposal from the immigration task force for coat collection. So ahead of time, you've gotten this agenda and you've also gotten a written report from them where they lay out that, hey, this winter, this December, we propose that the church collect coats for immigrants. And here's how we want to do it. And here's why we want to do it. And so you've had a chance to read that. The missions chair presents it, and then they need the affirmation of this team. That's why that's part of why you're having a meeting. They need this team to embrace it, the church council to embrace it, endorse it. So you hear the report, you've read the report, you hear the report, and now you've made a vote. So the action taken would record, yes, we support this. But then what are the next steps? I'm sure you can all imagine at a meeting where you've heard a wonderful idea and somebody has come and said, hey, I think it'd be a great idea for us to collect coats this winter for people that don't have coats. And so what do you say we collect coats this winter and give them away? And everybody, oh, that's a wonderful idea. Yeah, let's do that. And okay, we voted to do that. And you leave the meeting. And then what happens? Well, it didn't get in the newsletter because nobody knew they were supposed to put it in the newsletter, and it didn't get in the bulletin. It wasn't announced on Sunday, but a couple of people from the meeting kind of remembered, and they started bringing coats to church on the next Sunday. And they said, where do we put these? And nobody knew where to put the coats because nobody had decided where the coats were going to go. And so then they just sort of started piling up on a table in the narthex. And then it was, before you knew it, it was February, and there was a big pile of coats. And somebody said, what are we going to do with those coats? And somebody else said, well, yeah, we collected them, but we don't know where we're going to take them or who should do that. I've had that happen. I don't know about you, but that sounds like something that could quite possibly happen in many of the churches I served. If you don't want that to happen, here's what you do at your meeting before you leave. Even before you get to having to workshop that in the meeting, the proposal coming from the missions committee could have figured all that out. And the next steps printed in the thing could be, who's going to take responsibility for communication? Who is going to be responsible for a collection bin and where that's going to go? Who's responsible for announcing this on a Sunday morning? Who's responsible for taking the item, figuring out where the items are going and actually delivering them by a certain date? All those things should be recorded in the next steps so people clearly understand who's going to do what. And then somebody on your team is going to check in and make sure those things happen before the deadline. Those are all things that could make that wonderful idea so much more impactful and effective because people were clear about roles and responsibilities. This is a document where you have all that documented. You will have it after the meeting. You'll have it before the next meeting. It becomes your guide and a place to go back to time and time again to remember the decisions you've made together. All right. You want to also finish well. So you've gotten through your agenda, you've met together. Before you leave, offer space for clarifying that all the next steps are clear. Everybody understands what we decided here. Everybody understands what the next steps are. Make sure folks stand together on what's been decided and everybody knows who's doing what. Offer the work that you've done up in prayer. Ask for God's blessing upon the decisions that you've made and the actions that you've committed to. Use the end of the meeting to do more of what you began with by wrapping everything up in opportunities to experience God's grace and build stronger covenantal relationships with one another. End on time. If there's a need to stretch conversation, if you're feeling like, oh, we just need a little bit longer, covenant together to stay for 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes, but nothing more than that. Only if everyone can all stay and hang in there for that long should you extend it. If it can't be wrapped up, then say this is going to have to wait for another time. When the meeting ends, end it for everyone. Avoid what I call parking lot conversations, which can literally be parking lot conversations, people hanging out in the parking lot, rehashing what happened in the meeting, or calling each other up or texting each other if you've had a remote meeting. These kinds of things, they hinder trust. They sabotage the relationships that you've worked hard to develop, and they leave out the important voices of your team. It doesn't honor and respect the time that people have given because they can't stick around and continue to talk longer. Make sure that you honor the voices of everybody there and end in gratitude for one another. Share signs of peace and thanksgiving for what God has done and is doing in and through you. All right. I now welcome your questions, your thoughts, and any ideas that you would like to share with the rest of those who are gathered here. And we'll look to Bill to help guide this part of our conversation.
Okay, so let's get some questions first. If you have, well, we're going to do two things. We're going to get to some questions, and if you have some best practices, I've opened the chat where you can, the only ones who will see your answer, your chat answers are Erica and myself. So that way you're not feeling like others are going to know who you are. Some people want to remain anonymous in our webinars. And so only Eric and I will see the chat, and you can put your best practices. Also, I'm going to ask if there are, let me rewind real quick. This is our last training Tuesday of 2023, because we do like to take December off because there's this little thing called Advent and Christmas. We want people to be fully immersed in this season. And so if you have an idea or something you would like to see a Training Tuesday topic cover, you can also put that in the chat. Just know that Training Tuesdays are really designed to train our leaders in our local churches, to take them up to the next level. It's a convenient way. You don't have to go anywhere, but not every topic suggested will be a topic that is chosen, but I always like to get feedback as to what you may be interested in. So let's go with some questions. First of all, I'm going to give you the first softball question, and if you can answer it, you will be the most loved person in the world next to Jesus, and you'll be rich because it'll be in your book. How can I get members of the team to get excited and want to actively participate? And go.
Yeah,
yes.
It's a great question, right? Because I think that what happens is people are, they don't want to go to a meeting, and people want to make a difference in the world. They want to have meaningful work. They want to have, we're all called to participate in the ministry and mission, but if we don't feel like it's making any difference, then there's not going to be any joy in it. So back to that whole, why have a meeting if you don't have a meeting? People will want to meet if they feel like it's truly making a difference, if it's transforming lives, if it's transforming our world, and we can see that impact. So if you're doing something that doesn't bring joy, doesn't spark joy, ask yourselves why you're doing it. It's back to the question of why. Don't meet for something that doesn't have any impact. Stop doing that. If the mission that you're a part of is truly healing, loving, filling a need, meeting people's pain points and bringing them out of that. If you're making those differences in the world and your life is being changed for that, then you're going to be willing to go to a meeting that helps to make that possible. Not everybody is going to be cut out to be on the leadership team or on the committee. Not everybody's going to come to a meeting, but the people that are part of that team are not going to get anybody else to follow them if what you're doing isn't transforming lives. That's why we keep saying transformed lives, transform lives. So we're not going to make any difference for Jesus if we aren't ourselves being transformed and feeling the joy of what we're doing. So if what you're doing is just keeping something going that you don't believe in, or that you don't care about, or that it doesn't seem to matter, kind of like back to my one time a year 24-hour meeting where I actually had to get on an airplane and fly, it didn't seem to make any difference that I didn't go when my flight was grounded. Well, why would I go when the flight will make it then? Why would I want to go the year it isn't a blizzard? That meeting doesn't seem to make any difference anyway. So I was so glad when I didn't have to do that group anymore, because I wasn't seeing that meeting made any difference in the world. It certainly didn't give me joy. But I really want to go to the meetings that I'm a part of where we are equipping people, or solving a real world problem, or making it possible for people to come out of something that's got them down. All the ways that Jesus calls us to partner and be the hands and feet with Jesus. If my hands, my feet, my head, and my heart are being put to good use, then I am joyful about being there, even if I have to go to a meeting.
One of our participants kind of helped answer the question too, that if you want people to get excited, provide food, fun, and interest. But then we do have a follow-up. You talk about having a meeting where people are going to get excited because they're making a difference and they're transforming lives. And I think somebody says, how can you do that regarding finances of the church? So what if the topic just doesn't excite everybody?
Yeah. Then they shouldn't be on your finance team. You know, that there are people for whom that really come alive around numbers and spreadsheets. I work with some of those people because I work in administration, and it's not my favorite thing. And I don't even understand it. I have to go to finance meetings, and I always did as a pastor. I didn't necessarily go there with joy, but I will tell you what makes a difference for me working alongside the CFO that we have in both conferences is a person who is deeply committed to his faith, and for whom the numbers match mission, and that everything we do with our budgets is to equip the mission that we're about. And so when I go to a finance and administration meeting for Pendel or for Baltimore-Washington, I come away from those inspired, because we're not just looking at year-to-date financial balance sheets. We are talking about what is happening with the mission shares and the apportionments that are coming in. And you can see it come alive for the people that do that work. But if there are people on your finance team that can't make that connection or don't understand it as a ministry, as a mission, then you need to think about getting some different people in that role who really can convey that message and who want to be there.
Excellent. And I got to tell you, so this is your first time presenting for us. It won't be your last. Paul, the CFO that you mentioned, has presented 10 times because he does bring it to life. He makes it about the ministry and not just the dollars and cents. So a couple of practical items. Do you take minutes for SPRC meetings?
Oh, yes, I think you absolutely should. I was, and those have to be, carefully, well, all groups want to be careful holders of those, that information. You don't, for SPRC, I would not send the minutes out to the team via an email or print them out, because that's very sensitive. Often personnel information needs to be, have a lot more protections on it. What you can do is send out action items when you've made decisions on things. So if the SPRC has decided we're going to have a staff breakfast and we're going to provide a breakfast for the staff next month, we'll make sure that note goes out to everybody on the team with reminders and who agreed to bring juice and bacon and all the things. That kind of thing should be shared and remembered just the way minutes are. But the personnel notes, they need to be kept, maintained, and carefully protected. And there's a whole other program. There's a whole other one of these training Tuesdays for staff parish, I think. I don't want to get too much in the weeds of that. But I would say yes and no to that question.
An answer. So you have to be careful sometimes who might be in the audience when you share a story. So
I know.
From the church that had the retreat.
Yeah.
So excited that.
Yeah, I was really inspired. I was really inspired by, the pastors here.
They're
curious. Good for you.
They're curious as to how you found out, but more than that, they're going to give me the information of the person who led the retreat. We'll drop that in the chat. So if other people want to know about the Enneagram, we'll put that information in the chat. Somebody asked, what's the optimal length of a meeting? Is an hour sufficient?
One of our district superintendents said 59 minutes. That's her optimal time, 59 minutes. And she was shooting for that this year with her coaching of the elders who were presiding at church conferences. Keep it to 59 minutes, she said. And I think they did. I had a part of the presentation that I cut for time, but what I was going to say was it depends on what you're doing and when you're meeting. So many meetings can be an hour and a half. I have to have a bio break after an hour. I need to get up, move around, maybe go to the bathroom, get a drink of water. You're supposed to move. Our health experts say you're supposed to move every 45 minutes. So if you're sitting in chairs and having a meeting at 45 minutes, you should be doing some kind of stretch break. If you need to work longer, if you need more time, there are certain things that you might need to do that. A visioning experience, a creative process where you're a strategic meeting where you're developing initiatives. You need to come in it together and plan a block of time that's going to have ample time for creativity and breaks. That may need to be a retreat. That may need to be an all-day Saturday thing or an all-day Sunday or a Friday to a Saturday. You may need to ask people to take a day off from work so that you can really get in the work that you need to do. That's going to have to be a decision you make as a group, but I don't recommend anything more than an hour and a half in the evening. I just think that's too much to ask of people who are you're meeting in the evening for a reason, I would think, because they work during the day. So now you've piled on another hour and a half because they work during the day. So think about that. Don't go too long. I have a spouse who sometimes comes home after marathon meetings and we don't get to see each other except for 5 minutes before we both hit the bed. I'm no fan of late night meetings. Yeah.
Somebody else is asking if the agenda that you've provided, the minutes table, is too basic, and is there a time that there is that a narrative format is needed?
In the outline that I gave, is that
Correct.
what you mean, Bill?
Correct.
Oh yeah. So that is just, and you make it your own. I mean, it's just it's an example of what I use for many meetings that I lead. Or I use if I'm the recorder. I like this kind of format. At the end of that, what you can't see in what I showed on the screenshot is the end of that, where there's two sections. One is section, the for information only, and that's where you would have some narrative. And then there are attachments that would be the reports that would include narrative or RFPs if you want to look at all the proposals, if you're a board of trustees and you're looking at 3 proposals for firms that you want to hire to paint or whatever. All those get attached. the agenda should be very brief and just have the item and who's presenting and what time. And then you fill in, it's a fillable form, and the recorder can fill in as much as you want for a decision that was made or next steps. But all the narrative and all that kind of thing should be attached or at the end of the report, and everybody should have that information.
As I am multitasking, dropping in the chat the contact information for the Enneagram facilitator, Hazel Monet, and her email or her web address is in there. How about the well, first of all, you're getting a nice shout out from our conference lay leader saying,
"Yay, thanks, Lois.
This is exactly what her church is looking for training. It's been a fantastic webinar. What a way to end the season." Finally, is it required, necessary that meeting leader make the use of a meeting protocol and or Robert's rules? So are we required to use Robert's rules of order?
No, we aren't, but some teams find it helpful. That's part of, you have to decide what your leadership style is. You have to decide what works best for your team. I've been in some teams where we all want to work by consensus. Consensus is a whole different model. Sometimes it takes longer. If you do it right and everybody has a chance to weigh in, you're giving everybody a voice, and then we make sure that we all agree and we don't want to even vote. We want to make sure we're unanimous about every decision. That may be a way to go. Other times, other groups find that less effective, and Robert's rules helps establish some boundaries. And we're going to follow this, and we're going to allow speeches for and against and take a vote. And most groups use something kind of in the middle of that. Most church groups use something in the middle of that, where we all just kind of talk it out. If we have to vote, we vote. There's some things we're required to vote on. I mean, there's some things the Book of Discipline requires that we vote on. One is lay people that feel called to ministry. And if they want to go forward in the candidacy process, the church at the church conference, at a church conference has to vote affirmation for that person to enter into candidacy. So there are just some things that require a vote, and you have to do that. You don't necessarily have to use Robert's rules. You could establish your own rules. Some churches have bylaws that you need to follow. So there's no one size fits all answer to that. But I don't know of any committee, board, or agency of the United Methodist Church that requires Robert's rules. We tend to use them in annual conferencing and in our church conferencing, but it's not required.
Thank you. I'm going to make a bold prediction. You will be back to another broadcast. I have a feeling it will be on how to do maybe a different spin on meetings. And I also have a feeling maybe earlier in the season. What a great way this would to start our season, because every one of these committees that we're trying to train and prepare for a new year of service do meet. And I'll tell you, this has been very helpful. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight. For our participants, thank you. For our conference lay leader, once again, perfect attendance. We will be back in the spring as needed with a variety of topics that will benefit both annual conferences. We're working on those now, so you can ask me what those will be. I don't know yet, but we're working on them. And we just are so grateful for people to take the time, particularly at the end of a long day on a Tuesday that is blustery cold. But at least when I hit end, we're home. So have a blessed day and have a wonderful rest of your week. And for those who are celebrating the first Sunday of Advent, blessed first Sunday of Advent. For those who've made some adjustments, blessed second Sunday of Advent. But have a wonderful day. And thank you again, Erica.